Hey, what's going on, y'all? Light of the World Ministries. We're back, week number 2 in our Kingdom Living 101 series. I know I didn't make the video last week. That's because this past week I was preaching at a youth revival, and some of the things that I want to talk about today are some of the things that I was going to preach at the youth revival. But I didn't want to spoil it for anybody, so I had to postponed it for that week just so I could get it to you today, just so it'll still be fresh to them. And what I want to talk to you today about is discipline. In essence, you can't have a kingdom lifestyle without discipline. Now, I know a lot of you were probably like me. You grew up in church where the preacher always preached, once you got Jesus, then God will save you from anything. He will take all pain and suffering and hurt away from you, and that he'll deliver you from any and everything that you go through. But what if I told you that God will not deliver you from everything? What if I told you that everything that you go through is not necessarily a situation where God is going to deliver you from? Now, that's not to get it confused with me saying that God can't deliver you from it. God can deliver you from anything that he pleases. However, that does not necessarily mean that God will deliver you out of any and every situation. Watch this. In Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, we're going to go back to the creation, because in order for you to understand kingdom living, you have to also understand how God intended for man to live in the first place. And so throughout these series, you'll hear me refer back to the creation a lot, because I love it, because that shows where man was supposed to be. Now, watch this. In Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, we will see here a perfect God with his perfect hands and his perfect plan and his perfect will. He creates a perfect world, and he creates a perfect man in the perfect image, and he takes this perfect man and places him in the perfect garden in this perfect little world. Now, even in all of this, in this perfect world with this perfect man made by this perfect God, I mean, he was in the perfect garden, and even in the midst of this perfect garden, in this perfect world, there was still something there that if he was to entertain it, it would kill him. Regardless of how perfect the world was, there was still a tree of knowledge of good and evil, where if Adam was to eat from that tree, if Adam was to entertain that tree, it would still kill him in his perfect little world. Which leads me to my next point. It does not matter how perfect your little world may seem. It doesn't matter how anointed you think you are. It doesn't matter how wonderful you think things are going in your little world. There is still something there in your perfect little world that if you entertain it, it is going to eventually kill you. The writer Paul, he put it like this. He said, there's a thorn in my flesh. Now, something I want you to understand about Paul is that Paul was not no lightweight. Paul was not an average Christian. I know a lot of us feel like we're saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost, and some of us speak in tongues, and some of us dance and shout and sing and preach, and we feel like we're led by the Spirit, and we inhabit the Spirit. But understand, we live by the Word, but Paul actually wrote half of the New Testament. In other words, he wrote the Bible, let alone lived by it. He wrote the Bible. And this is a man who wrote the Bible, who walked in realms and dimensions of the Spirit, who actually dealt with God on levels that some of us may never understand. And he not only lived the Word, I'm telling you, he wrote the Bible. He wrote half of the New Testament. And he said, I prayed unto God 3 times. I said, Lord, there's something going on with me. There's something inside of me. He said, there's something that I'm dealing with that is hindering me from being able to serve you with everything that I have. And he says, I just want you to take this thing away from me. Can you remove this thorn that's inside of my flesh? And God said, I will not remove it. My grace, however, is sufficient for you. In other words, there are some things that I'm not going to take from you. There are some things you're just going to have to learn to be more disciplined in. That was the whole purpose of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden in the beginning. It was not to trip Adam up. It was not to give the devil any leeway. It was actually to teach Adam that everything you see is not something that you're supposed to put your hands on. Everything that you see is not something that you're supposed to go after. Just because you want it don't mean necessarily that you're supposed to have it. And it was supposed to teach him discipline. Why? Because if he was going to be God-like, if he was going to be God here on earth, then he could not be God and lack self-control. Watch this, because Galatians 5:22 and 23 says the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. In other words, he could not walk in realms and dimensions in the Spirit. He could not be God if he lacked self-control. And so God puts a tree there to teach him how to be more disciplined, to teach him how to control himself in certain environments, because everything that he saw was not necessarily something that he was supposed to have. And the same situation applies with you. Everything that you encounter, everything that you go through is not necessarily something that you're supposed to have. There's actually supposed to be a level, of tailoring yourself down, of understanding that if I want it, that don't mean I should have it. Everything that I see is not something that's going to benefit me. And until you learn how to be disciplined, until you learn to structure your life, then whatever you do, whenever you entertain it, you have to understand that without discipline, that thing will kill you. That was what it did. That's what the tree of knowledge of good and evil did. Because Adam did not discipline himself and not eat from the tree, when he ate from the tree, God said, the day that you eat from it, you will surely die. Which leads me to understand and believe that a man without discipline, a woman without discipline, a person without discipline is eventually going to kill themselves. It's not me, it's God. God said that. A man, a woman, a being without discipline will eventually kill himself. If you cannot discipline your drinking, if you cannot discipline your getting high, if you cannot discipline your having sex, if you cannot discipline your anger, discipline your frustration, discipline your depression may cause you to commit suicide. Your anger may cause you to gang bang and end up getting shot somewhere. Your drinking might end up putting you behind the wheel or giving you alcohol poisoning. Your getting high might end up getting your stuff laced and you losing your mind, or your chest exploding in your heart. I mean, your having sex might end up leaving you with AIDS. It doesn't matter. If you cannot discipline yourself, you will eventually kill yourself. And God cannot use an undisciplined individual. It will not happen. If you are going to maximize the potential of what your world should be, of how your world should operate, of how your life should be, if you are going to operate kingdom lifestyle, you cannot do this in an undisciplined manner. God said, let everything that's done be done decently and in order. You must do everything in decency, in order. God is a God of structure. He is not a God of chaos. In other words, you have to get yourself in line and tailor yourself down to the word and the will of God if you are going to make it in this world. It's not that God is going to discipline you. Stop blaming everything on the devil. Everything is not his fault. A lot of it is because you're undisciplined. Your marriage didn't fail because the devil got in your marriage. Your marriage failed because you couldn't keep your stuff in your pants, or you couldn't keep your skirt up. The devil didn't break up your relationship between your child and you. You should have put the bottle down. That if you would have stopped drinking so much, then maybe you and your child could have had a good relationship. If you weren't always getting high, maybe you could have made it through school. No, it's not the fact that the devil is doing this to you. The devil didn't take your job. If you wouldn't have been smoking weed, then you would have had a job. If you would have learned to discipline yourself, it's not the devil doing this to you. A lot of this is because you're actually undisciplined. And when you become undisciplined, you kill the environment, the lifestyle, the world that God has created for you. That's why your marriage falls apart. That's why your job falls apart. That's why your relationship with your friends and your children and all this stuff, that's why it begins to fall apart. Not because the devil is cursing you, not because a demon is tormenting you, but because you fail to be disciplined. I know I'm getting on y'all nerve. I know your attention span is short. That's all right. I'm done. But what I want you to understand is that everything is not on God. Some of this stuff is actually on you. And you can actually fix your lifestyle if you will learn to be disciplined. People might trust you if you learn to stop stealing and lying. Learn to discipline yourself. People might actually give you a chance if you stop cussing and stealing and lying. If everybody wouldn't everybody wouldn't push you away if you weren't always fighting and frustrated and depressed and had something crazy to say. People might actually want to start hanging around you if you would learn how to discipline whatever that little thing is in your life. Whatever is in your little world, whatever your tree of good and evil is, if you would learn to discipline yourself and stop entertaining it, then God will move miraculously, spectacularly. Beyond what you can imagine, then God will move in your life. But only when you discipline. Light of the World Ministries, Kingdom Living Volume number 2. Remember, ye are the light of the world. Please, please, please pass this word on. If you know somebody that needs to hear some of these teachings, some of these preachings, please feel free to share it. Feel free to comment on it. Feel free to tell somebody else about it. We're trying to spread the word of God. And if you have any questions, ask me on Facebook. You can inbox me any given time. If you have a question, I can address it via video or via message. It doesn't matter. Just let me know. But remember, we are Light of the World Ministries. We are about to start moving. And remember, regardless of what goes on, discipline yourself, because ye are the light of the world. God bless you, and I love you.